Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Seth Joyner Show. Um, Apologize for being late. Got some technical difficulties going on, but here we are. So much going on in the world of football, from quarterbacks changing teams via trade to the Philadelphia Eagles are trying to figure out how to complete their roster of coaches right now. Everybody's wondering what's going to happen as far as the quarterback situation. And we've got a Super Bowl on Sunday. The Kansas City Chiefs take on Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Excited about that. I'm rolling solo today. Trying to get my man Andre Reed in with me. But like I said, we got a little bit of technical difficulties today. So hopefully we can get it worked out. If not, we'll just turn it into a Talk to Me Tuesday. And I'll take you guys' questions. And we'll spend an hour talking about the Eagles, talking about the Super Bowl, talking about the quarterback position. First of all, let's get to it. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles and their new hire at head coach and Nick Sirianni. Listen, let me just say this. I know that in a lot of ways, Nick didn't look too impressive in his press conference. And let's just be honest, for a first-time head coach being in that position, it could be one of those situations where you have a little bit of anxiety and you're a little bit nervous. In my opinion, hey, it's a little sketchy, it's a little dicey. But what I'm willing to do, and I hope that every other Eagles fans will be willing to do it, because listen, he is the head coach of this football team, and it's going to be that way. I think we need to wait and see before passing judgment on the coach. Wait and see what type of coaching staff he puts together, and basically what it is that this team looks like next year. We know there's going to be a difficult situation with a lot of the players that are on this football team are not going to be here next year. You got a new head coach, you got a quarterback controversy potentially brewing, and at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of growing that's going to have to happen on this coaching staff. Nick Sirianni is 39 years old. You got an offensive coordinator that's 35 to 37. You got a defensive coordinator that's 35 to 37. I just looked and saw the linebacker hire. This kid is 27 years old. I don't know whether he can coach or not, but man, when you've got players on your roster that are just as old as your coaches, to me, in some ways, that could be problematic. What I'd love to see as time evolves and time goes by, is some veteran guys on this roster. And I get it. What you're doing and what Jeffrey Lurie has mandated is that, hey, we are pretty much, in rebuild mode. And if we're going to rebuild and we're going to get young, why not, get a young head coach with a young coaching staff that can pretty much go and grow, with these young players that we're going to bring along. Listen, it's going to be tough on a lot of the veterans. A lot of these veterans, are not going to want to be on this football team as they watch this thing progress and as things evolve the way that they are. But, at the end of the day, he is going to be the football coach. Mr. Jeffrey Lurie has pretty much said that that's it. Howie Roseman has picked his guy. And what I'd like to see is what this team is going to look like. And I don't think any of us really know what that's going to look like. The reports and rumors and innuendos continue to swirl around Carson Wentz and his desire to be here, whether he wants to be here or not. Supposedly, he's still upset with the Eagles about drafting Jalen Hurts and, he's got his feelings hurt about, a myriad of things and not sure whether he wants to be here. What I'd like to see Carson do, besides, Rodney McLeod via social media, congratulations on, his nomination for the Walter Payton Man of the Year Awards. I'd like to see him come out and speak his piece, come talk to the fans, come talk to the city of Philadelphia and tell them what's on your mind. It's one thing to have those conversations behind the scenes with, the organization, or maybe, that's not even there, because I'm of the opinion that if there's some conversation to be had, or there's some conversation going on with the organization, then there's some information that would, come our way, so we know exactly where he stands. Right now, we don't know whether Carson wants to be an Eagle. We don't know whether he wants to be traded. We don't know whether he desires, for Jalen Hurts to be traded. No one knows. No one knows what Carson Wentz wants. And a lot of people really sit back and they defend him. A lot of people defend his position. They defend the fact that, the team hasn't committed to him. They defend the fact that, they haven't given him the weapons around him to be successful, on and on and on and on. But he's in a position now where he can pretty much clear the air and let everyone know where he stands and what he wants. There's nothing like speaking for yourself rather than have someone speaking for you. But again, we don't hear anything. We don't hear anything from Carson. We don't hear anything from the organization. What we've heard from Coach Sirianni is that, there's the potential there for a quarterback competition. Now, I know you guys know that I'm all for that. That's my deal. Competition is how you bring out the best in every player, in every coach. And I think that that's important. If Carson doesn't want that, then I think that Nick Sirianni is in a position where, he should want to move on and move forward from Carson Wentz being the quarterback, or even competing to be the quarterback for this football team, because this team is in rebuild mode, and maybe Carson doesn't want that. I think at 28 years old, maybe he's looking at longevity. Maybe he realizes that, there's not too many years left in his career, and he wants an opportunity to prove, that he can be the guy. And we just know right now that, he's not going to be able to do that at least in the short term. He's not going to be able to do that because of all of the changes that are going to happen. I see Sean Brown says, hey, his silence is pretty much, it speaks volumes. At the end of the day, I agree with that 100%, because sometimes, you have got to, you got to step forward and be your own spokesman. You got to step forward and say what you want. You got to, claim it. You got to be a man about it. It makes no sense to be upset behind the scenes where nobody knows exactly what you want, and allow someone to paint the narrative for you and try to make it look like, hey, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. No, come out and tell the fans of Philadelphia what it is that you want. And then you clear all the air. There's no misunderstanding. There's no he said, she said. We can clear it up amongst the Wentz supporters and the Wentz detractors. You know exactly what it is that this guy wants, and then we can go from there. As I continue to look at this coaching staff and this roster, there are some things that I quite frankly, I'm miffed about. I'm miffed about the fact that, you could go so young and not really have enough veteran leadership from a coaching standpoint on your roster. Nick Sirianni has never been a head coach before. He doesn't have anybody on his staff that's been a head coach before. You've got an offensive coordinator that's only called offensive plays for one season. That was last year. And you got a defensive coordinator that's never called defenses live in a game as a defensive coordinator. There's a lot of growing there. There's a lot of wiggle room for mistakes when you basically have a coaching staff that inexperienced. taking over across the board. Normally you'll have some veteran some veteran coaches somewhere sprinkled in there, someone with some head coaching experience, kind of like, Jim Schwartz was here, and then we hired Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson had never been a head coach before. And, what it wound up doing was creating a situation where, Doug could lean on Jim Schwartz at times because he had already been there and done that. When you look at this coaching staff, where are these coaches going to lean? Who are they going to lean on? And I get all the chatter from Jeffrey Lurie and Harry Roseman about what they think about him and, what type of person they believe him to be, and, his coaching models and his coaching philosophy and whatnot. But in a live game, when you're the head guy, you've never been the head guy before. In a live game where you're the offensive coordinator and you've never really, had that job on an ongoing basis, or you're a defensive coordinator and you've never called defensive plays before, that's a tough road to hoe, man. That's a tough deal to just walk into, and all of a sudden you grasp it, you got it. Let me see. I'm looking at some of you guys' comments here. Lawrence Melton says, let's see. Lawrence says, a man stands up for himself and doesn't allow a narrative to be out there about him and to not address it. He says he finds it sad. Listen, I feel the same way. I just think that Carson needs to step up and say something. I just don't feel like, it's the right thing to allow the media, the fans, or even the organization to criticize or to paint the narrative for you when you have full control of it. And hey, sometimes, guys look at it like, like the Jared Goff situation. Jared Goff basically said, hey, I want to be somewhere where they want me. Now, granted, it was after the fact, but the fact still remains, he pretty much said something, and I'd like for Carson to stake his claim and say what it is that he needs to say, ahead of the situation. As we segue, let's talk about this quarterback situation and how it affects the Philadelphia Eagles. The Detroit Lions trade Matthew Stafford. They mutually agreed to part ways, and they trade Matthew Stafford to the LA Rams for Jared Goff, a third-round pick in this year's draft, a first round in 2022, and a first rounder in 2023. You talk about a king's ransom. I'll be honest with you. I haven't seen anything like this since the Herschel Walker trade from the Dallas Cowboys to the Minnesota Vikings, and all the picks that the Dallas Cowboys ran away with. I get it. I feel like the Rams are in a situation where they're at a crossroads. And I think Sean McVay, if you look at their offense the previous 2 years and how it has evolved this year, especially at the beginning of this year, what I saw is an offense that was wide open, an offense that was predicated on throwing the ball first and running the ball was secondary leading up to this year. A vaunted offense that got to the Super Bowl and against the New England Patriots could only muster 3 points in 60 minutes. And I just think that Sean McVay looked at that and realized that his quarterback, and this was one of my knocks on Jared Goff when he came out of Cal. I just felt like he was a guy that, pretty much he had all the tools. He had all the abilities. Extremely smart quarterback. But what I saw out of him was a guy that didn't handle pressure well. If he didn't have a clean pocket, if he didn't have time to go through his progressions comfortably, he became very average. He basically turned into a turnover machine, if you will, whenever the pocket wasn't clean for him. Now, granted, he's not a guy that's highly athletic, that's going to get out of the pocket and make a whole lot happen with his legs. But at the other end of the spectrum, as a quarterback, after 5 years, you got to come to a point at some time or another where you find this level of comfort where when pressure is in your face and people are on you, you find that level of comfort where you just, everything is even keel. Everything is moving in slow motion for you. And Jared Goff, after 5 years, never really got to that. If you look at that Super Bowl that they lost, the New England Patriots lined up in a 5-man line, primarily for the entire game. And what they did was they wanted to make sure that they were man on man blocking, that you couldn't double anybody across the board. And listen, they didn't have great pass rushes, but what they did is they pretty much went a 5-man line with the linebackers, not outside, but lined up inside over the guards, and they ran all kinds of games. And they were on Jared Goff all game long. And he was just melting under the pressure. Under the pressure in the lowest scoring game probably in the history of the Super Bowl. They came back the following year, last season, and they followed that up with trying to maintain that formula of a run first, but a pass first, I should say, excuse me. But what they found out is Jared Goff is he just can't do that. When you get him up around 40 to 50 throws in a game, the turnovers really become a major issue. If he's not being hit and fumbling the ball, then under the pressure, he's throwing balls that, result in interceptions and turnovers. So I think that Sean McVay realized he had to change his strategy as far as his offense was concerned and decided to, pretty much, go to a run first offense this year. I mean, when you watch the Rams earlier this year, I mean, they were smash mouth football. The way that they beat up on the Eagles, I think it was in week 2 or week 3. It was like the varsity playing against the JV because they came out and they ran the ball. They established the run, and then they turned around, they ran play action pass off of it, with jet sweeps and receiver sweeps and, all of these different things that kind of confused the eyes of the defense and put the defense at a disadvantage. And what that allowed them to do is that allowed them, to throw the ball, as long as they weren't behind, with some efficiency. But I think what wound up happening is that Sean McVay knows that, we're living in a past-centric NFL right now. And if you got a quarterback that can't stand in the pocket and when needed be able to carry the team, and you're paying him as a franchise quarterback, then that's problematic. Because all of these gurus or so-called gurus of today that think that they're doing something different offensively, and they're really not doing anything different. When you see 3, 4, and 5 wide receiver sets, back in my day, those were just third down offenses where teams were just traditional, 21 personnel, 12 personnel, 11 personnel. That was first and second down offense, 2 tight ends or 2 backs. Now everyone's running, 3 wide receivers. That's the norm. And sometimes 4 and 5 wide receivers, so they really aren't doing anything different. What they're doing is they're dictating to defenses what kind of personnel you can put on the field. If you go nickel or dime on first down, yeah, they're going to run the football. You come out and you play regular, 2 backers or 3 backers on the field on first and second down. They're going to, utilize the mismatch of having to have a linebacker matched up on a wide receiver or a tight end. So in my opinion, they're not really doing a whole lot differently. But what they're doing is they're running that third down offense on first and second down, and they're dictating to defenses, what they can and what they cannot do. And Sean McVay has realized that, what, I've got to have a quarterback that can stand in under the pressure, that can make all the throws, that doesn't get skittish, that doesn't get jittery, that has a little bit of mobility. And I guess they see that in a Matthew Stafford. Now, this move that they make, when you're talking about a guy like Stafford, I'm trying to see right here, Sean Brown says, let me see, where'd you go, Sean? Sean Brown says, sorry about that. Let me see. He says, Seeker, well, maybe means Seth. You do realize Stafford was all the Lions had, for 12 seasons, one top 10 defense and only had 1,000-yard rusher once. I get that. But what does Matthew Stafford bring to the table for the LA Rams? That is what Sean McVay is concerned with. No one will deny that the Rams have wasted 12 years of Matthew Stafford's career, not building around him, not giving him the support that he needs, so on and so forth. But you can't deny what he's been able to amass, as a passer in this league. I mean, even with the limited resources, he's still been one of the top, passers in this league for a long time. Sean McVay realizes that the Rams window, and I see you, Lynn Coulter. Let me give you some love because I was just about to say that. I think that they know. I think that they know that that their window is closing, and it's closing fast. With Aaron Donald and the guys on that defense, they're in a good place right now. You got some guys that are coming up on contracts that are going to have to be paid. Their window is closing really quickly. And they realize that if they don't win the Super Bowl, I would imagine in the next, at least 2 years, that window is going to close completely. And they're going to be in a situation that the Eagles find themselves in right now. They're going to really be in rebuild mode. So even though they gave up a lot, trust me, those first-round draft picks are like gold when you're talking about building a team, building a roster. So to give them away, that's a tough thing to do. But if you know that the most important position on the field is a position that you lack at, that you drafted a guy number 1 overall in 2016, and he hasn't been able to get you to the promised land, not only through his rookie deal, but in the first 2 years of an extension, then the thought process is, okay, what can we do to take care of the most important part, the most important position on the field? So that deal was made for Matthew Stafford. And I think that Sean McVay really believes that that's the change that's necessary to get this football team over the hump. Now, time will tell. Time will tell. Now, how does that affect the Philadelphia Eagles and Carson Wentz's situation? Is there a team out there? And I'd like for you guys to chime in with your opinions and your questions as far as this is concerned. Is there a team out there that would be willing to give the Eagles a king's ransom like the Detroit Lions just got for a Carson Wentz? A truth seeker says, now that's Sean Brown. He says he loves what they did. They went all in. But truth seeker wants to know, if the Eagles can ask for more for Wentz. Listen, I beg to differ. I don't think that Carson Wentz is, let's look at his years, to be exact. Coming off the ACL, he came back, he played, I think, 4 or 5 games before they shut him down for the rest of the year. He came back last year and, struggled through the beginning of the year, but, with, some practice squad wide receivers figured out a way to get that football team into the playoffs. Now he takes the blow to the head from Jadeveon Clowney, and all of a sudden they're done because he has to go to the bench, and pretty much that game is over for all intents and purposes. So a couple of observations. I think that his development has been arrested by the injuries, his inconsistencies. I think that where there's smoke, there's fire. We've been hearing for a long time about how Carson didn't want to run Doug's offense. He didn't want to run plays that Doug wanted, and he would check out of plays at the line of scrimmage and so on and so forth. That all of those things might not necessarily be 100% true, but, someone close to me used to say that, there's a little bit of truth in everything that's said. And I think that, in some ways that it's impossible for us to dismiss all the rumors that we've been hearing. Malcolm Jenkins steps up to the mic this week. And I know people don't want to hear what Malcolm has to say, but listen, um, you take it with a grain of salt. We've been hearing these things about Carson Wentz for such a long time. And at some point in time, we have to ask ourselves, is there any validity to it? Malcolm says, hey, they babied him. They tried to, placate, his fragile ego. And, instead of holding him accountable, and I talked about it early in the season. These are the things that make a difference on the football team. The difference between whether a team gels and comes together or whether you have fractures and fissures, if you will, in your organization, in your locker room, and in your team. Because, yes, the quarterback position is different, okay? But if I'm a player and I'm looking at Carson Wentz and I'm looking at how they're not holding him accountable, but if I have a series of bad plays, I get admonished, I get taken out of the game, but the same is not happening for him, that's problematic for the rest of the team. Because if you don't hold, that guy has to be more accountable than anybody else on the team because he's supposed to be the leader, okay? And if that's not what's happening, then there's problems, okay? So now, if we talk about what Carson Wentz is worth, you got to consider what it is a team is willing to give up. There was a lot of chatter coming into this year. Oh, he's injury prone, so on and so forth. A lot of people talked about, his record, 500 quarterback, even through the times that he played. There's so much to consider here. But I promise you, there's an organization out there that believes that they can fix him. There's an organization out there that believes that Doug mishandled him. There's an organization out there that believes that they can get him back, to 2007 form before he got injured. And then the Eagles went on to win the Super Bowl. The question is, what is someone willing to give up for believing in that quarterback in that manner? And then at the other end of the spectrum, taking on a quarterback whose extension kicks in this year, who's slated to make $32 million this year, how much of that guaranteed $68 million are they willing to eat? Or do they want the Eagles to eat some of it? And how many draft picks are you giving them? Are you giving them, if Matthew Stafford had 12 years in the league, he's got to be over 30 years old. Carson Wentz is only 28 years old. Can we get more for him? Can the Philadelphia Eagles shop him and move him for even more than what Matthew Stafford got? The thing about Matthew Stafford is you know what you're getting. Even though he's an older quarterback, you know that he's going to give you good football play, that he's going to give you good leadership, that he's going to stand in and take some blows sometimes because you know what? He knows if I'm going to take the blow, then I might as well stand in here and complete the pass. Okay, so you're going to get that from Matthew Stafford. At this point in time, the problem with Carson is we don't know what we're going to get. We don't know whether we're going to get the guy who's got the hurt feelings because competition looms. We don't know if you draft another guy and you bring another guy in the quarterback room that he's going to feel some type of way because he thought the team was his. The team is only yours when you've done enough to prove that you own it, that you're the leader, that you're the unquestioned, undisputed quarterback and franchise face of the franchise quarterback of the team. Until then, you don't get to claim it as yours just because you were selected 2 overall. So at the end of the day, what is it, that Carson is what's his value? What can the Eagles get? Or do we just go ahead and bring both of them back and let them go into a quarterback competition and may the best man win? A lot of what you heard at the end of last year, week 16 and week 17 about Carson Wentz, I don't think that it's coincidence. I think that he could see that Doug was a little bit enamored with Jalen Hurts, and it bothered him. And I think as people leaked some of those things that came out on game day morning of week 16 and week 17. And I think that's problematic because if you go into training camp and you have a quarterback competition, and all of a sudden, for some reason or another, Nick Sirianni and his offensive coordinator decide that Jalen is the guy for this football team moving forward. Now you're in a situation where you've got a quarterback who's making $32 million, who's a backup, and there's no value there for you as far as you being able to shop him around the league, because teams will know then that Jalen Hurts has just won the competition. Okay, so we just need to go ahead and get Carson out of the quarterback room, and we'll do it for little or nothing. So if this move is going to be made, I think this move has to be made either before the draft or leading up to the draft. I think if you wait beyond that, you risk putting, having a quarterback controversy where a quarterback may lose out, and then you may not be in a position to garner the value that you can garner now. I think teams are hot and heavy to be able to move and shake and bake. Once the 2001 year kicks off, I think that's one of the reasons why Nick Sirianni is pretty much non-committable as far as who is going to be his quarterback, because I really believe that they just don't know. I think that I believe that Howie Roseman, if he had his way, he'd shop Carson and move him. I think that Jeffrey Lurie is looking at it from a different perspective because of the amount of money that he's got invested in Carson. And can you recover any of that money by another team taking over the contract in totality? That $68 million is guaranteed. That signing bonus, how big was that signing bonus that you gave him last year? Did you give him $68 million up front, or is it prorated? Did you give the majority of it to him up front, or is it prorated evenly? Those are the problems. Those are the issues. And just trying to figure out what that value for Carson Wentz would be, and who would be a taker. You hear from guys like Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport. They talk about consistently how there are teams out there that are interested. I guess once we get closer to the fiscal new year, we'll figure out and find out who those teams are. And I would love to see it happen now. Listen, the Rams and the Lions didn't wait long to make a decision. They can't consummate the trade until the new year starts, but it's pretty much a done deal. They said, this is what we're going to do. This is where we're going to move. This is where we're headed. And that allows, them to open dialogue, as soon as the fiscal year starts with a Matthew Stafford and get him started, and moving Jared Goff over and getting him started. I think the longer you wait, the longer of a problem it becomes. Whether you're talking about moving Carson or whether you're talking about moving Jalen, I think it's in the best interest of either one of those guys that you figure out how you're going to move on and where you go early. What is the defense going to look like for this football team? I'd like for you guys to chime in. As far as, the defense coordinator is concerned, from what I understand, there's not going to be a whole lot of change as far as, scheme. But at the end of the day, you've also got a defense that needs massive overhauls. Last week I talked about, some of the guys that potentially might be available in the free agent market, guys with connections and ties to these coaches, Xavier Rhodes for the Colts at cornerback, TJ Carey, a cornerback from the Colts is going to be, a free agent. And then, at tight end, if what we hear has any validity to it, that pretty much Zach Ertz is on his way out the door. You can turn around and bring Trey Burton back in. And that would, kind of tide you over at the tight end position until you're able to go and draft another guy that you can develop, another pass catching guy that can pretty much complement Dallas Goedert. Zach Pascal, even though he's restricted, he has some ties, with Nick Sirianni. Marlon Mack coming off an Achilles tear last year, spent the entire year on the injured reserve, will be back, 100%. When he was healthy, he was just a beast. And then you got safety Malik Hooker. On the defensive side of the ball, we definitely need some safety help with Rodney McLeod with the tear, and then you've got inexperience back there with Kayvon Wallace. You need some competition back there. You got a linebacker in Anthony Walker, a Colt. He's only 25 years old, pure tackling machine. But I think we need to get more athletic at the linebacker position. And then obviously, from the Chargers, you've got 3 offensive linemen, Dan Feely, Forrester Lamp, and Sam Teavee. All of these guys, can be guys that fill in on the offensive side of the ball. But on the defensive side of the ball, I'm curious what we're going to look like. Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox, still, I believe, got some good years in them. But when I look at the rest of the defensive line, I really don't see a whole lot there. Malik Jackson has been a disappointment. Hargrave is more of a 2-gapper, a guy that really can't get after the pass rush. And then what are we going to do over, at right end? Even though you've got a guy in Josh Sweat that really flashed and made some great strides last year, I'm a little worried about his knee. When I watch him, running around on the football field with that brace on his knee, he doesn't look like, he's got many snaps left in him, even though, he had a great year. Derek Barnett, the Eagles didn't pick up his option. And I thought he played well when he was healthy last year. But you got a new coaching staff coming in. And when, you look at when those coaching staffs look at these guys, these guys that long-term, do they fit what you want to do on defense? Do they fit into the mode of player that you want from a defensive perspective? And quite honestly, when you look at the secondary, and, I skip over the linebackers, I'll come back to the linebackers, but when you look at the secondary, they're pretty much in disarray. I mean, the only mainstay that you got that that's going to be there is Darius Slay. You made a trade for him. You gave up draft picks for him. He's going to count, as a major hit towards your salary cap next year, so on and so forth. And, quite frankly, he's the best defensive back that you have. So that guy's coming back. But when I look across the board, who else is it that you're going to bring back? How much better coaching can you provide some of these young players in the secondary to get them in a position where, they can step forward and grab the reins of a position and claim it. When we drafted Avante Maddox, I should say, I love the kid. I just thought that Jim Schwartz and the secondary coach, his name kind of eludes me at the moment. I just thought that they did a terrible job of developing him, and I thought they ruined him. Because when he came in and he took over for Darby when Darby got injured and was out for the season, I thought that he played some phenomenal ball on the outside. When you watched him from a technique standpoint, I thought that, he was the most technically sound cornerback that they had on the team. And then what wound up happening is when the following year, Darby comes back, Mills comes back because both of them were out because of injury. and then you plant those guys right back in. And what wound up happening is they took their best corner on the outside from the previous year, and they moved him to slot just because you had two veterans on the outside, and you wanted to give them their jobs back. Well, they ruined him because they put him at slot, and he struggled at slot, and then he wound up having to go back outside again. And because he had been groomed and practiced, to play in the slot, he got outside and was confused because the previous year he played over on the right side. Then they moved him over on the left side after they moved him from the slot, and he was just all screwed up for a second-year guy. This is what you put him through. And I've seen some of the comments here. People are talking about, how much he stunk and whatnot. Corey Underland, thanks, Lawrence. Corey Underland was the defensive backs coach, and then Manuel Marquand came on last year and took over. But I just thought both of those guys did a terrible job of developing these young cornerbacks that we have. And there's some guys there that probably can, at the end of the day, turn around and do some things and help improve the football team. But again, it'll come down to coaching, and it'll come down to this coaching staff looking at these guys on film and making a determination whether these guys actually fit into, what it is that they want to do long term, and how much they can change the dynamic of what each and every one of these players will bring and what they mean to the football team. Now we go back to the linebacker position, and I'm just trying to figure out and find out what that position is going to look like. I think that Nate Gary was a guy who Jim Schwartz fell in love with. He felt like he could change him and turn him into a linebacker, a kid who played safety in college. I think we can all agree that experiment didn't work out all that well, and the Eagles should be looking to move on from Nate Gary at least in that position. I don't think you can turn around and try to repurpose him, at a safety, a position that he played, because even though that's where his instincts, in my opinion, lie. I think that you need to bring in a veteran linebacker, a guy who could have a voice with some of these young players, a guy who can kind of mentor them a little bit. I see my buddy Jeff Taylor just chimed in. He said the Eagles need to trade for Miles Jack in Jacksonville. Best linebacker in a bad situation team-wise. Hey, listen, you may be correct, I think, but at the end of the day, the question is also, will Jacksonville be willing and want to part ways with Miles Jack? I know he was trending a couple of years ago. As of late, I haven't heard a lot from him, but maybe he needs a new start, a new home, a new destination. That would be good. I say you keep Alex Singleton. I think he's a guy who's played in the Canadian League with a lot of experience. But I also think at the end of the day that he needs a little bit of coaching to help take him to another level, to help get him where he really needs to be. It's a big difference between playing it in Canada and actually playing in the NFL. But I think at the end of the day, he is a guy that you pretty much can say he played some great football for this football team last year. And he's a guy that with great coaching, with elevated coaching, he's a guy that can, take his game to another level. I want to see what Davion Taylor can bring to the table. I want to see what Sean Bradley can bring to the table. And I'm not, maybe this coaching staff can change the dynamics. Damon Rose wants to know what I think about TJ Edwards. I think at the end of the day, TJ Edwards is a guy who's able, but I think he's a guy kind of like Anthony Walker that I talked to you guys about this on the Colts. He lost his job and lost playing time because the Colts made a decision to go with guys who were much more athletic. And he's a guy who's a thumper. He's a guy that's just going to go straight ahead and make tackles. He's going to make a lot of tackles. But at the end of the day, he's a pass coverage and a zone drop liability. I see that in TJ Edwards sometimes. I see a guy who, has some ability, in the run game, limited ability in zone coverage, and really limited ability in man-to-man situations. So that's my thought about him. But as the offseason continues to go on, I hope that this coaching staff can kind of talk Howie into, maybe drafting a linebacker, within the first, 4 rounds. I just think that this team is in a position where you need a difference maker. When I look at, Devin Bush, when I look at, I'm trying to think of the kid down in Tampa, 45, his name eludes me at the moment. When I think about guys like that, and even though those guys were, first round draft picks and things of that nature, I just believe that in order to get elite level play, you got to invest in elite level players. Devin White, Devin White and Devin Bush. When I look at all of these different the good defenses, when you look at the good defenses, no matter what it is that that Howie Roseman thinks or the organization thinks, in my opinion, if you're going to have a successful defense, you better have some linebackers, because it's not like I said it before. It's not like back in the old days. You don't have 3 linebackers on the field, or you don't run a 3-4 defense where you got 4 linebackers on the field. They don't. Most teams are running, even though they want to designate, some of these edge rushers as outside linebackers. They're not linebackers. They're tweeners. They're guys that are too big to be linebackers and too small to be defensive ends. So they put them at defensive end on the weak side, and they hope the teams don't put tight ends or 2 tight ends over on that side or come in with an extra offensive lineman so you can keep that guy freed up to actually go and rush the passer. But, what you have today are teams that are pretty much running a 4-2 front. So if you're only going to play with 2 linebackers on the field, those 2 linebackers have to be, they got to be hell raisers. They got to be guys that can run. They got to be guys that are playmakers. I'm not talking guys that just make tackles. They got to be guys that can do a myriad of things. Guys that can get on tight ends and cover tight ends one-on-one. Guys that can cover running backs out of the backfield one-on-one. And yet and still in a run game, when you only got 6 guys in the box instead of 7, those guys can hold it down without you having to drop the extra safety in the box to get the 7th man in the box or an 8-man front by bringing in an extra defensive lineman and taking out a linebacker or a defensive back guy. I just think that, that's an area that we can no longer ignore. They've got to shore that up, and they've got to figure out a way to get a guy who either has some experience and is proven, or a guy that you look at and you say to yourself, hey, that guy can change our defense. That's what, what the Pittsburgh Steelers did when they drafted Devin Bush. And that's exactly what Tampa Bay was thinking when they drafted Devin White. And you can see the fruits of those returns. So I'm hoping big time. My man Joey Bag of Donuts, he's saying, what I think about Michael Parsons out of Penn State. Listen, I love the guy. I just don't think, the Eagles they're not gonna spend a first round pick on a linebacker. And if they're not willing to at least use a early second round pick, if they decide to move out of that position and move up. If they can't get him by the second round, they're not going to get him. So he's not going to be there. So we can fall in love with these guys all we want. There's a lot of guys that you look at and you see the potential, and you say, man, he would look good in the Philadelphia Eagles, uniform. But truly, at the end of the day, what winds up happening is, you've only got so many picks, and if you don't deem that guy to be an important piece to your football team, an important piece to your defense, then you're not going to use a pick early enough to actually get him and bring him on your team. Well, other teams look at that position and they see the value of drafting a guy with that kind of athleticism, that kind of innate ability early on, and they're going to snatch him up. So I just don't see the Eagles with an opportunity to actually get him. Let's see. Let me grab some more of your questions here. Just for a couple of minutes. Jimmy Allen, Tom Cook wants to know. Jimmy Allen, what's his not liking to be coached? Oh, you guys are having some private chat going on. He might not. From what I've seen, who knows? Let me give my boy Jeff one more holler here. He said, dudes that force turnovers, take on the run and cover tight ends and back blue chip linebackers. You're talking about, Micah Parsons, 100%, Jeff. But the problem is, the Eagles don't value that position enough, nor are they going to, actually spend a high draft pick to move up and get him. Lawrence Melton. What happened? Where'd you go? Lawrence. Davion Taylor wasn't the best available linebacker in the third round last year. I'm sure there were more linebackers that were not projected available. I tell you what, Lawrence, you're 100% correct. It wasn't like Davion Taylor was a guy that was on everybody's radar. I think he's another one of those guys Howie Roseman kind of went off the deep end of and had an opinion that this guy was going to be better than everyone deemed him to be. I mean, listen, he's a guy who came to football late, and you use a third-round draft pick to pick up a guy, and that's the thing that, ticks me off when I hear Jeffrey Lurie talk about defend Howie Roseman. You can't defend a move like that when there are guys that are available that have proven, and the draft gurus and the people that do this kind of stuff all year round, they're projecting these players. And granted, there's no foolproof situation as far as, where these guys, how these guys are going to develop and how good they're going to be. The draft is a crapshoot because unless you know that a guy is committed, he wants to win, he wants to be the best, that he's going to work his behind off to be the best, you just never know. The way these guys game the system now, they're prepped for the combine, so they can run the best 40, have the best vertical leap, and broad jump the furthest, and lift the most weights. They're prepped on how they answer the questions when they go in and they have interviews, with the coaches and the GMs. So they can game the system and make you think that you got one thing when you really getting something else. And that's the tough part about drafting. But when you move up in the third round and you take a guy like Davion Taylor, that's a project in the third round. I mean, how many projects have we drafted over the last couple of years? And it just seems to just continue on and on and on that we make these mistakes. And then Jeffrey Lurie sits up in front of the media and deflects the blame from Howie and throws it on the entire group. Well, who has the last say when it comes to, who makes the picks? I know for a fact there's a lot of people involved in last year's draft that wanted Justin Jefferson, okay? But Howie saw something that he thought no one else saw. And what wound up happening is he picked another guy and the guy we should have taken is going to be the NFL Rookie of the Year and just went to the Pro Bowl yesterday, or 2 days ago. I mean, that kind of stuff makes no sense to me. So where's the accountability? You're going to hold Doug accountable. You're going to hold, players accountable at some point in time, because accountability was Jeffrey's mantra when they fired Chip Kelly. But now he's deflecting the accountability away from Howie Roseman and putting it on the overall group, those 5 or so people in the organization that he feels like have the potential to be GMs. We don't even have a GM right now that's able to make great draft picks and make great decisions, And for me, that's problematic. And I'm just tired of seeing the mistakes being made year after year after year. Take the guy that's slotted there. You're not smarter than the football people out there that have been doing this longer than you've been alive. Okay? Look at the film and look at true playmakers, and then interview guys and find out, do they love football? Do they eat it? Do they sleep it? Do they breathe it? That's how you know that you got a player. Now, he's got to have all the intangibles and everything else to go along with it. But man, if I'm evaluating a guy, I want to know that guy is just, football is all that matters to him, and football has been all that matters to him, that this is a dream of his, that this isn't something that just popped up at some point in time because it's a way for him to step out of, the situation that his family has been in. Because when money drives you and money's the overriding factor, then you're never going to do all the things that are necessary to be great. If you love the game, then football is not work. Working out's not work. Studying is not work. Preparation is not work. You're doing it because you love to do it. So then you have to ask yourself, when you see these guys that miss, these guys that you drafted that don't pan out, do they love the game, or do they love what the game can provide for them? And that's my problem with Howie Roseman, and that's my problem with the draft and what the draft will look like. And it seems to me like, we brought in another head coach that's going to acquiesce to Howie Roseman again. When I hear that he's in charge of roster moves and he's in charge of game day roster moves, that makes no sense to me. If I'm the coach, I know what players I need on a game day. You don't know what players I need. You don't know who's a little bit banged up, and I don't know if that guy's going to make it through a whole game. So let me put this guy up and put that guy down so I can ensure that if that guy can't finish, that I've got somebody that can step in. It makes no sense. Howie and Jeffrey don't need to be in that much of control of how the team looks and how the team operates when it comes to personnel and game day players. But yet, you got a head coach that you've hired that's agreed to it, and to me, that will continue to be a problem until they hire a guy that tells Howie, step back and let me do football, and you worry about the salary cap, and you could collaborate with me on personnel decisions and draft decisions. Now we've got a formula to be successful. But I'm sorry, Howie Roseman has been the GM of this football team for way too long, and I've seen way too many missteps to believe that he's going to be the guy to get it right. Because at the end of the day, you can talk about everybody else that's on that team, that's in the organization, that's responsible underneath Howie. But at the end of the day, he's the trigger man. He's the one that's accountable. He is the one that's going to make the final decision on who we're going to draft, who we're going to sign, and who we're going to let go. For the last couple of minutes, we're going to talk about the Super Bowl. So, Super Bowl 52, we've got Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and the Kansas City Chiefs going after Super Bowl II back-to-back. Not very many times have we witnessed or seen that. And then you got Tom Brady, the guy's defying Father Time. That's defying the detractors, that creates more hate among football players than I've ever seen. I'm the type of person where, I'm here for greatness. and I'm here to watch a guy who's been playing as long as he's been playing at 40-something years old, exhibiting greatness. So I don't hate Tom Brady in any way, shape, fashion, or form. I just feel like, this guy is doing something unprecedented that we've never seen. Now, you talk about the game. I know a lot of you guys are not going to like it. A lot of you guys are going to be mad at me. Quite frankly, I'd like to see Tom Brady win this Super Bowl. But my football mind tells me that when I watch the Kansas City Chiefs, I don't think there's a team out there that can really beat them. The Chiefs destroyed them early in the year, which is a plus for a defensive coordinator like Todd Bowles, because now all of a sudden you get to a point where, you've seen it. You've seen what they do. You see how they key break. You see all the things, and now you can prepare from a different perspective. But one of the weakest parts of the Tampa Bay defense has been the cornerbacks. Now, I think that there was a great connection between what you saw in the defensive front and what you saw in the secondary last week, because those guys just plain and simple got after Aaron Rodgers. They got after him at every turn, and it seemed like that pressure took the pressure off the cornerbacks, and they were playing with two safeties, two backup safeties. So how are they going to handle the Kansas City Chiefs? If you play man, now you got a situation where if you don't get your hands on Tyreek Hill, if you don't get your hands on Travis Kelce, these guys just run away from you. And most teams don't like to get up and take their shots at the line of scrimmage because they're afraid that they'll miss. The one thing that I'll say is that I feel like, Tyreek Hill is a guy that you got to cover man to man. I think he's a guy you got to double. I think Travis Kelce is a guy that you better get up on him, and you gotta take your shot at the line of scrimmage. Buddy used to always tell me, hey, if you don't want to cover him, beat the hell out of him at the line of scrimmage. And what Kansas City does, they flex him a lot, especially, when they want to pass the ball, because they're trying to get him away from the traffic. They're trying to get him away from the jam. Because if you can jam him at the line of scrimmage, then you throw the entire timing of their routes off. So when he's supposed to be at 7 and he's at 5 because you got a good jam on him, now all of a sudden Patrick Mahomes, he has to go to the next guy in the progression. He can't wait for that guy. He can't wait for Travis Kelce to get open. Okay, but when you play off of him and everything is timing and you're not touching him, you're not jamming him, you're not rerouting him, you're not making them adjust their path, then it's like 7-on-7. It's like 7-on-7 and they're in practice. And what they're doing is they're just, at the end of the day, they're just throwing the ball on time and you're trying to catch up. So I think the major thing is take Tyreek Hill away. Even if you line up in too high safety, if you line up in too high safety, Andy's going to run the football. They're going to run the football because they want you to come out of that too high so that they can stretch the field in single high. And Mahomes can look the single high safety off one way and come back the other way. But I wouldn't show them single high all day. I may rotate to it, but I'd never, ever line up in it against them. Okay? And I'm going to drop that safety away into the box with outside technique on Tyreek Hill so we double him and take him away. Take your shot and your jam at the line of scrimmage, realizing that you got help over the top. And if he gets away from you, you got help over the top. Okay? That guy's going to come down and help you. And now you can either try to get back over top or you can try to help somebody else on a crosser. You play it like a robber technique. That is the dilemma for that defense. You talk about Tampa Bay's offense. I think Tampa Bay has enough weapons. If Bruce Arians doesn't get greedy and Tom Brady doesn't get greedy, if they don't get greedy, they got enough weapons, to go back and forth with this team. There's no doubt about it. You're going to have Antonio Brown back, probably healthy. You're going to have a full complement of wide receivers. So there's no reason in the world why you can't be able to take advantage of the things that Kansas City defense brings to the table. And you know what? They're not a juggernaut of a defense. I see you, Jeff. I hear what you're saying. You know, Steve Spagnuolo's been awesome. And yes, he beat Tom Brady, you know, in a Super Bowl in the past. I get it. But I think that Tom Brady's in a different place right now. I think he's with a different group of guys that's gelling at the right time offensively. And he can come with that all-out pressure like he did on Josh Allen last week if he wants to. You know, the key to that defense is understanding and knowing where the honey badger is. Once you get him out of double high safety and he's down around the line of scrimmage, you know they're coming. Okay, it's just a matter of whether is he coming or is he sugaring, making you think that it's coming from this side and they're coming from the other side. Okay, but they show it early enough that Tom Brady's got to realize, okay, where's my mismatch? It's not like these Kansas City Chiefs DBs are world beaters. You know, they're going to have opportunities to hit big plays down the field. They're going to have opportunities, you know, if these wide receivers can win at the line of scrimmage. The key for Tampa Bay's offense is just don't get greedy, you know, because what you saw in the second half, they're up 21-3 at halftime, and they come out and they're throwing the ball all over the map. And within 15 passes, Tom Brady had already thrown 3 interceptions. Why? Because Bruce Arians, no risk it, no biscuit mentality, and his interview at halftime, we got to stay aggressive. Why do you have to stay aggressive? You're up 21-3. Run the freaking football, run the clock out, and win the game. But you making your quarterback throw the ball all over the place, trying to get more points, create a situation where guess what? Now you turn it over, and now you're making it a game. To me, that makes no sense. Okay? On the Kansas City side, if they can't control Patrick Mahomes in the pocket, then they have no shot at winning this football game. I actually believe that Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback on the move than he is when he's in the pocket. Now, when he's in the pocket and you don't inhibit or you don't jam his wide receivers or his tight ends at the line of scrimmage, well, yeah, guess what they're going to do? It's going to be just like, 7-on-7. And the other thing that Kansas City is really good at, when you play zone, they have an ability to flood a zone. Okay, they put the extra guy into the zone. So if you only got, let's say you're rushing 4, okay, you got 3 over the top and you got 4 underneath. Well, when they put 5 guys into the route, you can only cover 4 zones, and they will wait for you to vacate a zone to open up a zone for someone else. What I like to see them do is start off in 3D and then roll to 2 high and drop a guy in, either weak roll or strong roll, where you got 5 guys underneath and 2 over the top. That way, now you can match up in your zones. When a guy comes through your zone, the 3 guys in the middle, okay, we're going to match up. The guys on the outside, even if you get crosses, guys that leave you, you now got the second man through the zone and you pick him up man to man. And what now look like cover 3, okay, what now look like cover 3 now is basically zone match with man, and it turns in man too deep. So now you mix some of those things up within the scheme of what you do. But if you're just going to line up and just drop to your hash marks and drop to your flats, you're not beating Patrick Mahomes with that. You're not beating that juggernaut of an offense like that. You got to get up and challenge people at the line of scrimmage. But if the defensive ends and the tackles can't keep Patrick Mahomes inside the pocket, then they're going to have some problems. They're going to have some big-time problems. They're going to have to be disciplined in what they do. You can't blitz the guy, unless you show it really, really late. And maybe some of that, dropping that extra defensive back into the formation, maybe you can delay blitz him where you don't show it to him right away. But he's so good at pre-snap reads, and taking advantage of where your weaknesses are. And Andy does a good job of actually, calling plays, like I said. And then You go over to the defensive side of the ball. They have made some hay actually blitzing, unlike they've done in the past. Spagnuolo's a guy that he'll bring pressure, but what you saw him do to Josh Allen last week, I was like, my goodness. I mean, he was just heating him up from everywhere. And what he wanted to do is he wanted to speed up his clock. That's what you do with a young quarterback. Speed up his clock, speed up his progression, speed up everything. And then he got jittery and he got all out of sorts. And the game was over once he started bringing pressure at him. It's a growing situation for Josh Allen. He had to experience that to understand what that failure will be like in order for him to be able to succeed the next time he's in this situation. But I think that, that defense, that Kansas City defense, I don't think that they're getting up front what they thought they would get out of Clark. I think that Jones, is a guy that can be dominant if he plays all the time, but he doesn't play all the time. Linebackers are decent. They're good, but they're not great. I think Tampa Bay's plan will be and should be to come out and try to really run the football. Because if you can make them get out of too high safety, if you can keep them out of these blitz situations, where Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badgers just all over the place, creating mayhem and tricking people, then, you've got an opportunity, to do something against this defense. But if you let them get in their sweet spot, and you rattle Brady, and you allow, the Honey Badger to play games, to get inside the quarterback's head, it could be a long, long day for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, offensively and defensively. Hey, I know most of you guys want to know what my prediction is, but like always, I don't give predictions this early in the week. I'm going to be continuing to break down what I think and what I see. I saw 2 Kansas City guys, with the COVID situation. So the week's not over yet. We don't know what that's going to be like. But if you really want to know, what my predictions will be on Sunday, you'll be able to find that over on my social media. I'll be on Twitter with, my prediction. I'll be over on Facebook with my prediction. And I will be on Instagram at Seth Joyner Show with my prediction. And you'll be able to see who it is that I think will win this game. And I think my record's been pretty good. Through the first 2 rounds, I was 8-2, and then last week I think I was 3-1. So I got a pretty good record working. And like I said, I want to see Tom Brady win his 7th Super Bowl. But in my mind, in my football mind, in my analyst mind, I just look at this Kansas City offense and wonder, can they be stopped? And Groovy Savage just said, hey, the Chiefs' offensive line is in shambles. Hey, listen, you lost, Eric Fisher. I get that, but Eric Fisher's been out at other times during the year. They've had guys out at other times during the year. They even got Mike Remmers on the roster, and this guy is the guy who, was supposed to be protecting Cam Newton's backside in Super Bowl 50 when Von Miller went off in the first half. They figured out a way to rehab his abilities and have him play well. So, and listen, Patrick Mahomes knows that he can't hold on to the ball if he's got differences, at his offensive line position. So he's going to be looking to get that ball out of his hands, and he's going to be checked to max protection, when you show that you're going to give him one-on-ones, because he knows that he has the advantage in those situations. So, like I said, follow me over at my social media, Seth Joyner on Twitter, Seth Joyner at Instagram. Over on Facebook, you've got Seth Joyner and you got the Seth Joyner Show. And always go in, if you guys miss anything, you missed any shows, you can go over to Seth Joyner Show over at on YouTube and catch past shows. But I would also invite you to go over and subscribe, to my YouTube page as well. As the off season goes on, I'll be adding to that, doing some video breakdowns and whatnot. I'll be adding to that. So go and follow, please. That's our show today. Thank you guys for joining me for Talk to Him Tuesday. We'll get Andre worked out. Hopefully, I can get him back next week, and we can, kind of wrap the Super Bowl and talk about, what's going on with his Buffalo Bills. I know some of you guys are a little bit of Buffalo Bills fans, but, thank you guys for your continued support. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. And like always, be good to each other and take care of each other. But most importantly, love each other. I will see you guys right back here next week. Looking forward to Super Bowl 55. Excited for the last game of the 2020 season. And as we usher in the offseason and the free agent period. Hey, you guys take care. Be good to each other. Like I said, love each other most importantly. And I'll see you guys right back here next week on the Seth Joyner Show. Peace.